Hi, and welcome to the Sam Sorbo Show. This is my first vodcast back after a prolonged hiatus. We're going to talk a little bit today about Stop the Steal, also some homeschooling stuff, and Dan Bongino, who now looks primed to inherit a prime time position in our media, at least on the right side of things. So I gotta start off by saying to everybody, thank you for hanging in there. I've gotten so many comments and so much feedback and requests. People don't know where I disappeared to. Um, it's been challenging, not least because of COVID and now the election and everything. And I just couldn't resist. So I'm going to try to do a full hour right now. And see where it gets me. But it's been a little bit challenging with the move and everything else that's been going on to try to keep the show going. I have been doing my vodcasts on homeschooling. I started The Accidental Homeschooler back when COVID first reared its ugly face. And that's been actually quite beneficial to a lot of home educators out there. And aren't we all now that COVID's around? Parents are finally sort of waking up and saying, oh my gosh, first of all, what's going on in our schools? And secondly, what can I do about it? And the good news is there is a lot you can do about it. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Before I go any further, I want you all to understand a little bit about Parler or parler. It's first of all, it's a French word, parler. Parlez-vous français? Yes, and it means to speak. Or actually, parlez-vous français is P-A-R-L-E-Z, but they have a thing called P-A-R-L-E-Y, which is basically the equivalent of your tweet. And Parler has been blowing up now, especially since Jack appeared before Congress. Yeah, that was weird. There were a lot of jokes made about him that he had actually just gotten some homeless guy to fill in for him. He's got this funky beard and stuff. And hey, I'm not all about, commenting on somebody's appearance. Other people were commenting on that, but he did give off a certain vibe, a certain granola vibe, which I suppose is to be expected. I don't know sort of what the big surprise there was, except I guess because he's a billionaire, you would think that maybe he would dress for the show. I don't know. But anyway, he had very poor answers. We are doing our best. We're trying really hard. Nobody's buying it, especially people, of course, on the right, but even people on the left aren't buying it. So, and to that end, actually, I had something from Parler that I wanted to talk to you guys about. Maria Bartiromo is on there, and she just did this thing on Parler talking about how she's going to be going over what's happening in Michigan, what's happening in Pennsylvania today on her show. Of course, you're going to get this late because this is my first time doing this, and I am not adept. I've gone over that with you guys lots of times. I'm not technologically sound. But Parler, who's really blowing up, I think, is Dan Bongino. He has so much interesting information. Joe Manchin just came out and said that basically no way, no how is he going to allow them to pack the courts. They would need votes, specifically his vote, because he's the guy who might cross over and help them out. And he has now gone on record saying that he would not be doing that. That's good news if he sticks to his word. I think he's a man of his word, but I don't know. And desperate times called for desperate measures. I also don't know what they have on him, if they have anything on him. And I know that that's part of the game in a sense. And so there's that. But the thing that I noticed on Dan Bongino was this article called New York Times Journo Spreads Fake News About Fake News. And the reason I want to talk about this is I have a friend who is a liberal, and I emailed her some information about some of the stuff that was coming out about the fraud, right? And we know there's fraud. there's very obviously fraud. And so I had emailed her about that, and she wrote me back and said, I don't know what you're talking about. They've called the election. It's done. Joe got the votes. Now, mind you, apparently Pennsylvania just went back into the mix, and they're taking Pennsylvania away from Joe. I honestly can't keep up, and I don't know what's real and what's fake. So what's happened is I've honed my sources. In fact, a friend of mine just emailed me and said, "Where do you go for news? Because we don't know where to turn anymore." Fox News has been pulling things off the air, like Cavuto just pulled somebody off the air, basically, and said, well, we can't listen to that anymore. I believe it was Cavuto. When I get better at this, I'll have clips for you and stuff. Who was it? Sandra Smith commented on a Republican talking about the vote count and about the fraud in the vote count. And Sandra Smith said, I don't understand what she's talking about. It's done. We've called it. We've called it. We, the esteemed media, the media has called it, and they know what's right for us. They know what's good for us. They know. So I got to say, like, it is disconcerting to see this happening in the public square. And more disconcerting is to know that there's maybe 50% of the country or so who are buying into it. I have friends who are saying that they basically are fomenting revolution. They, the left, the media, the Marxists. We've heard from Ocasio-Cortez and I believe even Michelle Obama saying, is anybody keeping track of who the Trump supporters are so that we can basically do away with them in whatever terms they're meaning to sound like, to retaliate. They're talking about retaliation. So I want to talk to you quickly about that. The left is screaming tolerance when it serves them. And then when they have control, they just, and by the way, they scream for tolerance, but they offer none. And when they have control, they demand fealty. So we have a leftist media now, and you know this, the MSM basically. And it was so surprising to see new members in that class. Scary. Although I have it on good authority that the Murdoch children donated heavily to the Biden campaign. I know somebody who did a bunch of research into that. And yes, it was through various organizations that they are involved with, but there was a lot of money that was funneled to the Biden campaign. For some reason, it's in their interest for Joe Biden to become president of the United States. And so they've basically turned their back on not President Trump. No, on the voter. Because it was Fox News who would have held out and said, hey, there is something to see here. We need to do some more research. We need to double check the figures. So very disappointing, I have to say. And, you know, I've been disappointed before. I think Newsmax is really poised to enter the space. And I'm excited for them for that. I was on Newsmax yesterday, had a great time. They let me speak my mind, which is lovely. Not that I allow people to not let me speak my mind. So, all right. So the New York Times journalist who's spreading fake news about fake news. This is Matt Palumbo who posted this, but it's up on Dan Bongino, and you can go to bongino.com. So here you have somebody who his name is Kevin Ruse, which I think is funny. Ruse, because that's fake. A ruse is a fake thing. And that's his last name, although he spells it Roose. Forgive me, you know I love wordplay. Reporting on things that he doesn't like now constitutes fake news. The dimwit Ruse is best known for compiling a list of the top 10 best performing posts on Facebook every day. It must be incredibly frustrating for him to see Bongino.com links featured at a rate at least 100 times higher than the New York Times. Many conservatives have long speculated that Ruse maintains this list so that he can make a case that Facebook should throttle the spread of conservative news on the platform. Well, that's right. That's their plan. God forbid the left's century-long monopoly on the media would be broken. He has since advanced his alleged strategy to rebrand all viral conservative content as fake news, all of it. Anything that goes viral that doesn't agree with him is fake, not just in disagreement with or what have you. This is the ideology of the left. Quote, Facebook is absolutely teeming with right-wing misinformation right now. They are among the 10 most engaged URLs in the platform. These are among the 10 most engaged URLs on the platform over the last 24 hours. So he wrote that in a tweet. And then it's the Republican in Michigan goes from loser to winner after technical glitch was fixed. So I'm sure you heard about that. They fixed a technical glitch and then, oh, oopsie, I guess President Trump won. Our bad, we're sorry. AG William Barr authorized the DOJ to look into voting irregularities. That's highly performing on Facebook. Michigan legislature holds rare emergency session to investigate election irregularities. And Perdue and Loeffler call on Georgia Secretary of State to resign over the election. Honestly, resignations are kind of useless. Although if they can put somebody else in power who's not corrupt, maybe they are useful. Of the four in particular, he drew attention to an entire 100% of them are true. These are true stories. It's not fake news that this actually happened. They did change the winner. Michigan did change the winner. Barr did authorize the DOJ. Come on. But he's complaining. And he's complaining because they're reporting it. He's complaining because people are learning the truth. This is communism. This is the communist. I think people don't really understand what communism really is. And it's so hard to grasp because in the United States, part of our whole sort of system of thought is that we value truth, except now, decades into the indoctrination program that had infiltrated our schools back in the 50s and 60s, now we are at a place where, well, it's your truth and it's my truth. My truth might be different than your truth, but I'm entitled to my truth, and you can have your truth only if it agrees with my truth. It's crazy, but this is where we are. And so here you have a so-called journalist who is saying, how dare they report these things, whether they be true or not? How dare they report them because they confront my worldview, which is that Biden won. He's the winner. And we put that to rest. We put that to bed. Ben Shapiro actually tweeted back, these stories are not false, of course, but Kevin Ruse's actual job, like so many of our tech activists, is not to spot misinformation. It's to badger social media giants into censoring conservative outlets. Yep, that's where we are. Jeffrey Ingersoll wrote, this is absolutely wild. Kevin Ruse is one of the leaders of the effort to annihilate his publisher's ideological competition on Facebook under the misleading auspices of tech journalism. And here he's caught red-handed, lying about the accuracy of certain stories. So if it disagrees with my worldview, I will simply call it fake, which is actually, it's interesting because if you recall, way back in the day at the beginning of Trump's campaign, they called him fake. There was something, there was a fake meme, a fake thing happening. And Trump grabbed that word and applied it to to the news that he disagreed with. Well, that's fake news. The funny thing was, it was fake news. They were misreporting things about him. And so he called it fake news. Now they're trying to steal it back. We'll see if they're successful. And incidentally, I have a new book coming out that I probably should tell you about. I'm excited because I just got the artwork for it. So I'll be putting that up on Twitter and Parler and just spreading it around just to let you have a sneak peek. I'm very excited. It's a book called Words for Warriors. And it goes into sort of, not to get too technical, but it talks about how the left has appropriated certain words and has misidentified their definitions in order to suit themselves. So I'm very excited about it. It's a bit snarky. It's got a lot of humor in it. And it's a great sort of just reference book. Like, wait, what is that? What's he meaning with that? It's a great reference book. So I'm excited. That comes out, but not till January. So I'm a little bit on pins and needles, but it's looking really good so far. And it's Newsmax publishing arm that's publishing it for me. So I'm excited about that because that's kind of fun. Okay, Eddie Zipperer wrote, but these stories you posted are all true. I mean, he's calling them right-wing misinformation. And that's why my friend who texted me and was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Now the left thinks, well, the right-wingers are all just misinformed. It's not that they're dumb. It's just that they know so much that isn't true, which is, of course, a Reagan quote about leftists, which was far too kind, frankly. So we are becoming fully bifurcated as a society, such that despite what Joe Biden is saying, oh, we should come together, I want to unify the country. And by the way, they call for unity when things are going their way. Just unify with us. Just come along. But when things are not going their way, for the past 4 years, with Donald Trump in the presidency, they called for outright hostilities. Where does that put them? Hypocrites? That's kind of a nice word. Tim Carney tweeted, please explain how these stories are misinformation. Anyway, that's up on Dan Bongino. And he's just, he's doing such a fantastic job. Okay, so I want to go over this but I'm spending a lot of time. So, okay. This is up on, it's kind of funky. It's thetruthaboutcancer.com, but they've done a whole sort of assembly of the different things election night that got us to where we are, that were anomalitic. They were oddities, which is why we're kind of wondering what happened and how could it happen? And maybe we need a little bit of a forensic thing to figure out. Here's the thing. If we don't do the forensics on this election, then no election in the future is safe. Does that make sense? I know you guys are with me on this. Okay. Around midnight on November 3rd, TGB reported in Pennsylvania, Trump was ahead by nearly 700,000 votes. In Michigan, Trump was ahead by 300,000 votes. In Wisconsin, Trump was ahead by 120,000 votes. And then after we went to bed, and by the way, in, I believe, Wisconsin, the poll counters were told, polls have closed, go home. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. In the wee hours of the morning on Wednesday, November 4th, at around 3:30 a.m., magically out of nowhere, Joe Biden's Wisconsin tally jumped almost 200,000 votes. Jumped almost 200,000 votes without a single vote for Donald J. Trump. without a single vote. Now, that is a very odd thing. In fact, a friend of mine did the math on that you would flip a coin 100, I believe it was 138,000 votes that came in, 130,000 ballots, that you could flip a coin 130,000 times and have it never come up tails is what we call a statistical impossibility, not improbability. Statistically impossible, because the chances are so tiny as to be zero chance of that happening. We're supposed to believe that Wisconsin had a nearly 90% turnout. That's never been seen before. And by the way, for a candidate who never got more than 36 people to a rally, but he got more votes than Barack Obama in 2012. What? How is, so that begs credulity. It is not believable. And for that reason, it needs to be investigated. Now, somebody put this on a graph, the state of the race in Wisconsin, total presidential votes for each party so far, with 89% of Wisconsin's expected vote counted as of 6:23 a.m. on November 4th. And what happened was the Republican votes are on an upward curve. So they counted a bunch. Then it crossed into November 4th. It counted a bunch, and both candidates were rising over 1 million votes. Donald Trump had about 1 million. It looks like 1.2 million or 1.3 million, as of 12 a.m. November 4th. And Joe Biden, also on a very similar curve, had come across the 1 million mark, the 1 million vote mark, at 12 a.m. on November 4th. And then they continued to climb, with Donald Trump climbing higher and arcing over, higher than Joe Biden, but Joe Biden arcing over under Trump by 200,000 or 300,000 votes. And then all of a sudden, maybe at 5 a.m., according to this chart, Biden jumped 130,000 ballots or 300,000 votes, something like that. No, probably 130. That's probably what that is. That's crazy. And Trump, nothing. Not a thing. Now, part of the reason that that's crazy is what I've heard about what's happened in Florida. So in Florida, the weird thing is, and this is very odd, Trump won Florida handily, okay? But there were a number of Trump voters who switched to Biden. There were like a bunch, many. And then there were a ton of Biden voters or of Democrat voters who switched to Trump. The assumption being that voters for Trump were voters in red districts who had voted for Trump the first time around. And the people in the blue districts who maybe they never voted before, or maybe they did, but there were a ton more votes for the red from the Democrat districts. If Florida is any indication of the United States, then we ought to be thinking that maybe in the Democrat districts, in the swing states, there were a bunch of Democrats who were voting Trump, which is why, and I know this is just conjecture, but if a ton of Democrats voted Trump, then the Democrats said, we haven't switched enough Trump votes to Biden in order to win. We're going to have to come up with just some straight Biden votes across the board in order to put him over the top. Now, mind you, these anomalies, these odd leaps, or what look like voter fraud, only happened in swing states. You can do the math on that. I don't know. I'm just saying they only happened in the swing states. So what does that actually mean if that's the case? Biden inexplicably jumped over 130,000 votes in the middle of the night without a single new vote for Donald Trump. And I don't know if you've seen it, but somebody did a screenshot of the vote tally before 4:30 or 5 o'clock a.m. and the vote tally after. So right before the leap and then shortly after the leap. And the Trump votes are exactly the same. That's fishy. Literally 100% of the 130,000 ballots were for Biden. Okay. Donald Trump tweeted about it, said this is very strange, but there are other anomalies. And there are people who have come forward and said, no, there's something wrong here. There are Republican people who were conservatives who were supposed to be allowed in to observe, and they weren't allowed in to observe. There were places where they were counting ballots, and they put up barriers so you couldn't look in. So they're removing transparency. There's a guy in, and then of course there's the videos I'm sure you've seen of the people just marking ballots. There's a registered Democrat named Brian McCaffrey who filmed a brief video from the Philadelphia Convention Center. In his own words, he said, quote, "This is a coup against the president of the USA. There is corruption at the highest level in the city of Philadelphia." He's a registered Democrat. What's in it for him? Well, maybe he likes truth and he believes that we ought to be behaving as if we respect the truth. All right, moving on. Well, let's see. Before I do that, no, because I've got a little bit more to talk about. So this is from a trusted source that I have. There is a big movement going to try to get to the bottom of what a lot of people are considering voter fraud. And so I've been watching that because, frankly, I'm hoping that Donald Trump will continue to be president. And we will see. I think that he's done a phenomenal job. If you haven't seen Leaders for Life, which is a movie that I was participating in, go to leadersforlifefilm.com. You can watch it for free. We offered it for free because how do you save a nation that is hell-bent on self-destruction? We need people to value the premier value of the United States, which is life. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that among the rights that they claim, that they lay claim to from their creator, is the right to life. And without life, none of the other rights really matter, do they? So I participated in this film. It's doing really well. People are really liking it. It's not necessarily making money, but that wasn't the point. But we do ask if you enjoy the film, a donation would be nice. Just a small donation, nothing fancy, but we do ask because we're hoping people enjoy the movie, and maybe we can get the filmmaker paid back a little bit for his trouble. He just made it out of his own pocket. It's pretty incredible. So this is from 20 Days to Save the USA, and they're telling us not to believe mainstream news, including Fox News, who wrongfully and shamefully have declared Biden the winner. So this is the problem. Is the mainstream news and Yahoo and Google and all of them have come out and said, we declared the winner. That has yet to be certified. Now, people forget that the way our system works is the way it works, and it's not the media that gets to decide. And for the past several elections, I would say, the media has certainly overstepped its boundaries. So they've called the race for a candidate and neglected to call it for the other candidate when how do we put it? So when it was obvious that one candidate would win, if it was their candidate, they would call the race. If it was not their candidate, they would hold off and say, well, we don't want to speculate. It's too soon to tell. I remember that. I remember when Reagan swept the nation, and it was too soon to tell until they literally had no other choice. They were so against Reagan winning his second term. So this guy says Trump's won with at least 289 electoral votes and more likely 311. The favorite word flung about by most members of the major news media seems to be the word baseless. Their lockstep mantra is that Team Trump has made baseless claims of voter fraud. And yet, I just went through this with you. They're not entirely baseless. How about 131 signed legal affidavits in Michigan alone of voter fraud being witnessed? 131 legal affidavits. Or the whistleblower inside who's willing to tell how votes have been stolen. How about 600,000 ballots counted in Philadelphia and Allegheny County, where ballot watchers were illegally banned? They were banned. That was against a court order. They went up against a court order in order to steal the vote. How about in Antrim County and elsewhere where there were obvious voter irregularities? Trump had a landslide in Alaska. The Associated Press still says it's too close to call. Out of 270, and I was just talking about this, out of 273 total votes cast in Alaska, Trump has 118,000, Biden has 64,000. Biden has 36% of the vote. Biden would have to switch that claim and take over 80% of the remaining vote, more than double. And yet they don't want to call it. If Trump's legal team wins, and I know people who are in the know, and the legal team is absolutely devoted to this, they're involved, they're strategizing, they've sued on behalf of the campaign. I know they've sued in Nevada and other states to get to the bottom of this. If they win enough of the contested ballot counts in the other states, it's as if the mainstream media is reserving the right for Democrats to claim a last-minute surge in Biden votes in Alaska. It's almost as ridiculous as calling the affidavits baseless. So Joe Biden has not been a constitutionally certified winner by the states. The Supreme Court has yet to rule. And I will tell you that back in the day, I don't know if you remember, when Gore was running against Bush, and they called it for Gore. And Gore was actually considered president-elect for over 30 days, for over a month. And they didn't actually get the election certified until mid-December of that year. I think it was 45 days in, because it was contested. But the media was like, oh no, Gore won. We know that Gore won. Never mind, you Bush fans. Do you remember the hanging Chad story? So this is where it gets really tough for me. Tough, I don't know if that's the right word. Back in the Gore election, in the Gore-Bush election, we had that story, the hanging Chads. Hanging Chad. In fact, I had to explain this to somebody the other day. The hanging Chads. So in Florida, and it's funny because I'm here in Florida, and it was in Florida. The hanging Chads, when you punched your ballot, if you didn't punch it all the way through, because they used to punch holes in the ballot, and they were pre-cut holes. So you'd pick the candidate, you'd put your pen on it, you'd punch the hole. If you weren't careful, the rest of that punch would hang onto the ballot. And then when you fed the ballot through the machine, sometimes that hanging piece would fill the hole back in, and it wouldn't register your vote. That little piece is called a Chad. And so there were hanging Chads on the ballots. And it sounded ridiculous. It sounded funny and ridiculous and weird. And it was an anomaly. And the news media carried it. They talked about it. They couldn't help but talk about it because it was a story. What you're seeing right now is the news media refusing to discuss and simply discarding any challenge as fake news. because they pre-picked their winner. They pre-picked their winner. That's not an election. That's an election under a communist regime. When the media and the state, the deep state, I should say, can pre-pick the winner. Okay, how are we doing so far? This is off of, do I want to go there? Hold on. No, I did that. Okay. Let's see. I want to talk just briefly, mind you, about homeschooling with you guys. Oh, by the way, I do have somebody who sent me a number of different articles about problematic issues with voting. Woman arrested in Vanderburgh County for pre-checking boxes on 400 plus ballots. Butler County, Pennsylvania loses untold number of mail-in ballots. Ballots stolen from mailboxes and discarded on roadside in Washington town. Group claims 400,000 ballots sent to residents who moved out of state or died in California. Texas officer and poll watcher testifies on 2020 Houston voting fraud using stacks of driver's licenses, and he has the photos. West Palm Beach residents received duplicate ballots for dead relatives. Pennsylvania postal employee on leave and now fired after bags of mail discovered outside of a home put out for trash pickup. 25,263 ballots rejected in Colorado primary. Rejected. No, not these. We won't be doing these. There was a video on TikTok. Some kid put a video up where he went into like a private area, put his phone and videotaped himself taking a ballot, showing that it was for Trump, and then ripping it up and throwing it behind him. And of course, on TikTok, it plays the same video over and over again. So I don't know how many times he did that, but it seems like he's indicating that he did that a lot, every ballot that he found for Trump. And anyway, double absentee ballots sent to residents in Henrico County. Pennsylvania rejects 336 duplicate ballot requests. 34,000 are rejected for other reasons. Many voters request ballots up to 11 times. Mecklenburg residents receiving double ballots due to labeling glitch. I could go on and on. It's from all over the country. Somebody, a friend of mine actually compiled this entire piece that's just links to articles about ballot inconsistencies and voting anomalies and things like that. Dozens of Michigan counties use the same software that caused 6,000 votes in one county to switch from Trump to Biden. So honestly, the allegation is that in Florida, they fixed the software so that some Trump votes would go to Biden, but not enough to create suspicion, but enough to maybe swing the state for Biden. They just hadn't counted on all of the Democrat votes for Trump. And there were a ton, because it's like, oh, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's in the hundreds of thousands. So Trump won Florida for, I think, 200,000 votes more than he got the last time. So he won 200,000 more people voting for him than last time. And Biden got more votes in Florida than Obama. And I don't understand how that happens, because a large part of Trump's voter votes, a larger part of Trump's votes came from the main Democrat counties. What was it? Anyway, there are three main: Palm County, Broward County, and I can't remember if it's Polk County. I can't remember. But there are three main counties in Florida, I'm still a newbie here, that are predominantly Democrat. And they voted Trump in the tens of thousands. That's huge. So if we might apply that in the swing states, then what we're looking at is fraud. Why would North Carolina be so different than Florida or any other state? And I don't have the figures for the other states. So I was part of a documentary, Truth and Lies in American Education, and they are looking for donations, but I just want to go through. You can go to Truth and Lies in Education, in American Education, and you can see some of the trailers and stuff on that. The battle over who will be president continues. One of the reasons this battle is happening is because one party is working hard to rewrite history to convince Americans that our country is bad and prejudiced and doesn't deserve peace and prosperity. And that group of people is the 1619 Project. Have you guys heard about this? So Wikipedia says it's an ongoing project developed by the New York Times Magazine in 2019 that is aiming to reframe the country's history by placing consequences of slavery and contributions of Black Americans at the very center of the U.S. national narrative. That is a very kind way of putting things. The project was timed for the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first enslaved Africans in the Virginia colony in 1619. It suggests that this date represents the nation's birth year. That's what they're teaching your kids in school. It sparked criticism, this whole project. It sparked debate also among prominent historians, and a number of them have come out to denounce it because it's a lie. However, that didn't prevent them from putting it into the schools. Jake Silverstein, the editor of the New York Times Magazine, defended the accuracy of the 1619 Project and declined to issue corrections. New American Magazine says lies by the New York Times in the late 1950s were crucial to enslaving the nation of Cuba under mass murdering dictator Fidel Castro. Lies. They told lies, just like they're doing now, calling the voting anomalies fake news, because a lie enslaves somebody to that lie. Fidel Castro was portrayed by the paper as an anti-communist freedom fighter. He's just a freedom fighter. He's so lovable with his fancy beard. Before that, Pulitzer Prize-winning lies by the New York Times were crucial in helping mass murdering dictator Joseph Stalin conceal his genocide by starvation, which he perpetrated against Ukraine, called the Holodomor. Now it seems that this far-left newspaper and the forces behind it hope that lies about America in the 1619 Project will destroy the freest and most prosperous nation in human history. Fortunately, the lies were caught early. They sparked outrage and scrutiny. However, folks, they're teaching your children in school. And if you leave your children in school, there is nothing you can do about it. So I urge you, take a look at my videos, go to my website, read up on homeschooling. You can get a copy of my book, They're Your Kids. I am working on, I suppose it's kind of the sequel, but it'll be a couple months before I'm finished. Why you should homeschool and how easy it is. It's easier than sending your children to school. And now with COVID, you really have no excuse because you don't really want your kids to go with their mask. I don't understand people, especially Christians, frankly, and I'm so disappointed because I talk to them quite a bit. And I'm always, I will tell you this. I went into TJ Maxx the other day, and I avoid wearing a mask at all costs. I will leave the store rather than put a mask on because I find them so stifling. So I was in the store, and the stores here in Florida have, they seem to have, by and large, adopted a policy of not asking you to put one on. Although I was approached in the grocery store and offered a mask, and I turned it down, and they said, oh, okay, we just wanted to know if you wanted one. So it's the soft tyranny. It's the soft pressure. You sure you don't want a mask? Come on, put it on. Above the nose. Yeah. Oh yeah, please, above the nose. All right, so I was in TJ Maxx. In the checkout line, gal behind me, really beautiful gal, from what I could see behind her mask, with her mask, I should say, had a little baby on her hip. And I asked how old, 1.5 years. And I said to her, you're going to have to homeschool, right? And, we were chatting and she said, I've been thinking about that. Thank you for saying that. I feel like you just needed to give me that message today. And I'm like, well, yeah, I do talk about it a lot. And if you want to go to my website and we talked a little bit more. And then she, of her own volition, she goes, you know what? Mask's off. And she put her mask down. And I'm heartened by that, because I have yet to see a study that conclusively proves that masks help more than they hinder. Sure, they prevent your breath from going out, and they force you to rebreathe air that you have previously tried to expel. That's true. However, we don't know the ramifications of what mask wearing is doing to people, for instance, who suffer asthma. I see what it does. I was in a store and there was a gal who, the gal who was helping us, she had her mask on. I did not. She didn't ask me to put one on. I was like, well, that's cool. We went to discuss the thing that I was looking at. And I looked at her and I said, listen, if it's the same to you, I don't care if you wear a mask. And she said, oh, thank goodness. She ripped it off so fast. She said, I'm hard of hearing and I read lips and it makes it very hard for me. No one counts the cost to them. No one counts the cost. So you might think that the mask is helpful. Great. You wear it, but you're not counting the cost. That's all. It's like sending your kid to school. Is it helpful? I suppose somewhat helpful, but you're not counting the cost, because it's very costly when you set it up so that your child is away from you for most of the day with a supervening authority, a superior authority, an authority that is higher than you on the authority scale, and you don't know what they're telling your child. It's very costly. Also, I think parents don't really understand what they're giving up, just in terms of their relationship with their child, when they go that way, So yeah, so I haven't worn a mask in a long time, happily, and I guess I have to wear it on the airplane because they won't let me fly without it. But even then, it's I find it very confining, restrictive, and I don't know that it's helpful. And yet we have an entire society who have been taught to follow directions. I mean, honestly, part of this, I wonder if part of it is just because the CDC initially said, don't wear a mask. They're not helpful. And their study says conclusively, the one that was done 10 years ago, their study says conclusively, masks may help to the tune of, I think it was 2%. They might make it 2% less likely that you'll contract COVID. And I'm looking at those odds and I'm going, yeah, I don't know that that's really helpful. So I won't put a dirty thing on my face all day. I call them face diapers. But where was I? What was I saying? I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, well, anyway. So yeah, if I have to, then I will. But I was in a store and I was about to make a very large purchase, and the salesman was being very nice, and I was without a mask, and the manager came over and said, you must put a mask on. And I said to him, do you understand that you're discriminating against me? I cannot wear a mask. And he said, well, you have to, or I need to ask you to leave the store. And I'm like, but do you understand that you are discriminating against me? And this is like Nazi Germany when they asked people to wear gold stars. Oh, it's just, just put the gold star on your outfit. Just put it on. It's better for you. That way we know that you're Jewish. And, it's better. And they agreed, and they did. And the guy said to me, and it was funny because he's a black guy, which I thought was kind of interesting. And he said, oh, well, I'm not going there. And I said, too late. You're already there. That's what this is. You're forcing me to leave the store. You're refusing me service based on my beliefs, basically, because I refuse to put something on my face that you've decided I should. Well, and he hid behind the fact that it was, oh, that's just our corporate policy. So, okay, you know what? Then I'll leave the store. And the poor salesman was like, because he thought that he had a big sale coming. Not so fast. Don't count your chickens. So, all right. Did I get through everything? I think I did. Stop the steal. There are a lot of things that are activism that's being organized. There's the Jericho March. There's the Stop the Steal rallies. I know that there are a lot of people who are getting involved in this. Roger Stone, Giuliani, Sidney Powell, who dropped a bombshell yesterday, I think, on Bartiromo, and said that they have proof that they have found 400,000 votes that are fraudulent. Man, if you're talking about proving votes fraudulent in those numbers, well, that's enough to sway an election. I'm sorry. Once you get over the 100,000 mark, you're talking real numbers. You're talking about swaying an election. You're talking dangerous. So, so that's that. Been on Twitter. Go follow me on Twitter. Not that, but go follow me on Parler. Oh yeah, I was going to talk to you about Parler. Can I suggest that you get on Parler? Please. We need to make Parler the new household thing. And by the way, there's Rumble also, which is sort of the YouTube for people, because YouTube's been censoring people. Twitter's been censoring people. Facebook, of course. We know all that. So there's Parler. Haven't heard of any censorship happening on Parler. And Rumble, which I have yet to go on because I've been posting on YouTube. Please head over to my website and check out my videos and share them with your friends. And lastly, I will tell you just a quick story. I decided to start a speech and debate club, kind of willy-nilly, just sort of like I'm doing this vodcast, which I'm trying to make an hour so that it's a podcast so it can go out that way. And my podcast producer has been very patient with me and stuff. So, Ron, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. So I started a speech and debate club because there was a need. I felt like we needed a speech and debate club. And I have done a couple videos on this, and it has been, you wouldn't think it necessarily. I didn't think it, but I just thought, let me just start it and see if there's any response from the community. Well, I have 2 clubs now, and they're going wildfire. And I've got young people, 12 and 13 years old, who are putting together debates, formal debates with formal arguments, structured, and strategy. They're planning their strategy, and they're getting up and they're matching wits with each other and cross-examining each other. And it's been amazing. And then I've got speakers too, who are coming up with these fantastic speeches about how to best serve yourself with social media without getting sucked into it. There's another kid who's doing a speech on how to build your own personal computer and why you should. And like, it's incredible. This is fantastic stuff. And we need to be empowering young people, not just with the truth, but with the ability to impart the truth, with the ability to share it, with the knowledge of how to share the truth with people. And on the flip side, we've got enemies of the truth who are trying to shut down the discussion and intimidate people from speaking the truth and convince others that the truth doesn't exist. This is the fight we're in. I personally find it exhausting, and yet I keep coming back because it's that important. And so I'm encouraged by you. If you wouldn't mind, go to my YouTube and subscribe. The more subscribers I have, the better it is. Frankly, it's just helpful. So I would really appreciate that. And you can go to my website, sign up for my newsletters. I promise not to inundate you. I can make that promise because I am simply not organized enough to get them out very often. So I don't even think I do a newsletter a month. And they're just sort of, here's up to date. My husband has a couple new movies that have come out. Before the Wrath is a recommendation. It's streaming on Amazon still, I think, for a short time longer. And it was #1. I think it still is #1 on Amazon streaming. It's a documentary. It's really fantastic. Your kids will like it also. And let's see, he's got Against the Tide, which is a documentary about John Lennox that is opening on November 19th. You'll go to Fathom or Against the Tide .movie to find screenings near you. And it's opening November 19th, but I know they have 2 dates depending on where you live. So it's only playing 1 date where you live, but they grab 2 dates because the theaters are so just completely, everything is getting up. There's a huge upheaval in the theaters, in the theatrical market, in the cinema market in the United States. In fact, we just lost a big cinema chain. They just shut down. As you probably remember, my husband and I have a movie that is ready to launch, and we can't launch it because there's just no confidence in the marketplace. And so it's just, we're in a tough spot with that. And if you're interested in catching up on that stuff, go to sorbofamilyfilmstudios.com. And there's a pretty cool video that I put together that's up on that, just a short, I think it's 1.5 minutes or something like that. So you can check that out. And thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Sam Sorbo, signing off. Bye.